So I wanted to sort of give you guys a little bit of a talk. Now, when I had spoken to Vale and Disa a couple months ago about this sort of presentation I'd give to you, the topic was sort of about trends that we're seeing in advertising and communications. And I've kind of modified that a little bit, and you'll see how. A little bit about me. So right now, for the past 5 months, I've been working at Media Arts Lab, which is part of the TBWA network, dedicated solely to this brand. And if you do see any bad formatting, lack of design in this presentation, it's because I've been spending the last 5 months launching the new iPhone. And so I haven't slept in about 5 months. But yes, hopefully it's all worth it. If at any point I said anything that remotely interested you, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever. Everything is always this handle. Just feel free to also say hi if you'd like. All right, I'm going to start now. So, some numbers. You always start with numbers because that's what you're supposed to do. And I like this little laser thing. I'm going to be using this a lot. So, I started working in the industry somewhere around here. And so the blue line was internet digital ad spending. Red line is TV spending. Now over here, we were this little outcast that we're always fighting for budget, fighting for respect, fighting for cool parties, and not getting anything. And all the TV people were getting all the glory. But now, look who is king. As of last year, digital surpassed television in sort of global ad spend, but not in global respect and not in global best practices. Because look what happened with that. As the more digital spend is happening, consumers are deciding, you know what, we've seen enough of this. You're seeing ad blockers globally also go up. So we're obviously doing something terribly, terribly wrong. And all the money in the world will not help us get that sort of the glamour of television, but also a lot of times the impact. And I think the big takeaway, what I really want to talk to you guys about today is the future of our industry is completely dependent on the future behavior of the people we're trying to talk to. So, now this talk will be about the future and predicting the future and how to do it. And just so you know, I am not Nostradamus, but what I've done is actually through 4 areas, through data, social, interface, and design, I'm actually going to sort of show you some tips and tricks for how we can attempt to predict the future, how we can attempt to find what is cool, powerful, interesting, and provocative before it's cool, powerful, interesting, and provocative. So, we'll start with data. As you said, always start with data. It's a good idea. And what I've done, and you'll see throughout my talk today, I've talked to some experts in the field. And so I've gotten some cool quotes from them, and also some interesting talking points to bring here to you guys. So the first one is, and you'll see what this means as I go through the next few sort of minutes of this presentation. So scrape what's available instead of waiting for it to come to you. What does that mean? Scraping data. Well, let's start here. So, laser thing. So everyone in this room, if you've had access to data, whether you're on the client side, whether you're on the agency side or the press side, you do have some data that talks about people's behaviors. If they love movies, what type of movies? Do they also like athletic shoes and all these kinds of things? You'll have Simmons data or whatever you have locally. Here you'll have social listening data, like in NetBase, that gets you conversation trends and word clouds. That stuff is great. It's fine. I mean, it's important. Everybody should be using it. But it's always looking backwards or looking what's happening right now. How can we use data to look into the future? To sort of, because all these things has already happened. So in this industry, we need to stay ahead and figure out what is going to happen. So this takeaway, it's in the APIs. Now an API is an application programming interface. The simplest way to put that is any website, any application, whether it's an Amazon or a Pinterest or an Instagram, they have this technology. They have their software that makes them Instagram or Pinterest or Amazon. Now an API is when these companies like an Instagram might say, okay, we're opening up our API, which means, hey, you developers out in the crowd, you can build on our platform using our tools and in a way extending what our platform does. And that's interesting. And it's mostly for developers, and they kind of build cool little tools on that. And sometimes you'll see apps on top of apps. I'm sure we all have Instagram here, many of us have Instagram, and many of us also might have applications that then push into Instagram, whether they edit photos on the side or they kind of add some cool effects that then plug into the Instagram API. So as you can kind of see, it's technology built on top of a technology. Now, why am I saying that? Is there's this company here, they're called Apigee, A-P-I-G-E-E. Now what Apigee does is they create a database of all the cool websites in the world, all the platforms. And every time one of those platforms introduces a new API, so for example, when Pinterest rolled out visual search into their API, and they kind of created that, all of a sudden you had all the developers being like, ooh, that's kind of interesting. So when the developers start building, all of a sudden you'll start to have these cool little applications that come out. And then when those applications come out, you'll have users kind of like, oh, hey, this is the cool thing that we're sort of making with this new API, right? The users kind of do that, and then after the users start picking up on that for a while, they'll go mainstream. Once it goes mainstream, then the advertisers are sort of saying, oh, that behavior is very interesting. And then after that, after a while, then eventually Instagram or Pinterest will then turn that into an ad product. And you have this long pathway. So this site, what we do is you go right to the beginning. Anytime a new API is released, all of a sudden you see what's going to be happening. You're able to see down the pipeline, and then you're able to say, oh, hey, I'll get a year ahead of all the advertising options, and I'll just start building now. We'll call Instagram, and we'll build this custom thing that nobody's ever thought of. We work with developers, and boom, you get a chance before anybody else, before it can even be an ad, you're working on it, and you're doing it, and creating a big impact. Another site is called Programmable Web. What this does, this takes all those APIs, and like a DJ or like some crazy salad bar, it mixes everything together. So you have developers that are saying, I wonder what I can do with the new Amazon, say drone delivery, and then I'll mix that up with Pinterest for shopping, and I wonder what happens if I mash those two up. So this is like a place for mad scientists to sort of mash up all these APIs and see what happens. Guess what? You can follow what they're doing here, see interesting combinations, and then work with these guys, sort of take inspiration from that and build on that. So that's another way to look into the future. So who has used data in a futuristic way? Now what I'm going to talk about is, it's not just APIs, but it's about scraping information that you have never thought about scraping. So here, this is Nike Flyknit racers, as they're called on Nike.com and as they're on the shoebox, Nike Flyknit racer. The thing is, people don't really call this a Nike Flyknit racer. They call these the macaroons, because it's the color of a macaroon. And they also, the different colorway with the black and white, they call them Oreos. So what we did, one of our TBWA companies called Engage, they actually went to Nike a little over a year, maybe a year and a half ago. And they said, hey Nike, just so you know, people are calling these shoes macaroons, they're calling them Oreos, and guess what? When they're looking for these shoes, they're typing in Nike macaroon, they're typing in Nike Oreo, and guess what? You're not getting any of that search traffic. You're actually missing 70% of search traffic because you're not following the nicknames that the street is calling them, that the young cool kids are calling. So what we did is the data that we used was just on these different hip hop forums and these different sneaker forums, and found out the nicknames for all these different sneakers, created a huge list for them and said, hey, we could actually fix your search and get that. They immediately handed the business over. So really, really interesting ways to use data. Another way, and I'm actually going to play this video, and I'll lower the volume and I'll talk over this video. So what had happened is there's this company, a hardware company, very similar to Home Depot that we have in the US, in Germany. And this company was like, you know what? We really need to understand our DIY audience a little bit better. And so what they did is they set up the security cameras. And they were trying to find patterns about the behaviors of the do-it-yourself crew, people that build their own cabinets, that take on these big home projects. What is a way to talk to all of them? What do they have in common? They tracked footage, and they kept tracking hours and hours. And the only thing they found in common actually was something really interesting. 30-something% of them, or 39% of them are bald. And we're thinking, oh my goodness, what do you do with this? They created an entire campaign called Heldenkranz, which is loosely translates to like the bald crown or the hairless crown. And they created a whole campaign around bald men and cast them as these heroes. And in the end, actually, what happened, it turned into this sort of pride in sort of not having hair. And the hashtag was taken over, and all of a sudden, what you did is you cast these men as sort of like, if they're bald, and if they're in the hardware store, you know that they're making things, they're getting their hands dirty, and it's something to be proud of. And it was really, really interesting to almost create a category of pride. And they had 91 million impressions that just came organically. It turned into this big thing. So it was really, really cool. So the next one is, actually we'll watch it for a moment. So really, really cool. So how often do you anticipate your data analytics team going through security cam footage in a hardware store? So once again, this is scraping the sources that you might not think to scrape. So another one, before I get into this video, a little bit of background. Actually I'll speak over this video also. We'll just hit play. Tokyo. The Adidas store was launching a running store in Tokyo. And it was kind of a little bit of a difficult proposition. Reason being, Tokyo is the hardest city on the planet to run in because of the buildings, the pedestrian traffic. It's such a crowded city. And just the infrastructure literally makes it impossible to run. And now we're opening a running store in the middle of the city. What do you do? So what TBWA Hakuhodo did, this is in Japan, they actually worked with, they actually analyzed the traffic light data, okay? They looked at all the different sort of patterns of traffic. Then they talked to the police, and they worked with the police data. And they overlaid sort of the police traffic data and also as well as the different routes that people might go and all this. And what they did is they actually created a 26.2-mile marathon in the middle of Tokyo that went along all the traffic lights. So you could actually run a marathon and every light was green when you ran this in the middle of Tokyo. And all they looked is traffic and police data. And so it was something that was really, really impressive and a great way to launch a running store in the middle of the hardest city in the world to run. And as you can kind of see it in action a little bit. And also know they had to do this at night, obviously, too. But, and it grabbed attention across the world. Great, so moving forward. Now, data isn't just for the marketing, it isn't just for the creative in itself. We actually also use data as a way to create a paying structured relationship with clients. So when we took on the Airbnb business out of Los Angeles in 2014, it was Airbnb approached us. They said, hey, listen, we're a 21st century company. We were born of this decade. Our business practices, heck, most of our employees are under 35. Now you're an agency. Sure, while you've done cool things in the past, all the Apple stuff and this and that, you're kind of older than us. How can we trust you to do cool things for us being this younger, newer world? Very disruptive place. So what we actually did is we said, listen, we guarantee that we can do this. So what we did is we looked at the data and we actually created a formula in partnership with Airbnb that said they paid us, at TBWA, they paid us a base rate. I'm not allowed to say how much, but they paid us a base rate. And what we did is said, okay, for every increase in nights stayed, our payment increases. You pay us more. So when they won, we won, and vice versa. They created this mutually beneficial relationship, and that was all founded on the data of looking at growth charts and kind of looking at the night stays, making forecasts, and doing all of this stuff together. So it was even, like I said, data can be used to create a payment structure. And another interesting one, Spotify. This is not a client payment thing. I probably should have put the other slide earlier. So what Spotify does is they know who is listening to what every single place on the planet. They can create a map of music. And what happened was, around Valentine's Day, they decided to have a little fun because they saw that people in New York were really listening to a lot of Justin Bieber around Valentine's Day. And a lot of it might not have been moving, so it means there might have been Home Alone. And they created Out of Home. Dear person who played Sorry 42 times on Valentine's Day. what did you do? So obviously referencing two Justin Bieber songs to one, put that boom in New York and kind of had a little bit of fun with it. Now, it's important to also note that while we could use new data sets, while we could scrape APIs and find interesting payment structures and these things, it doesn't always go well. So with new territory come new ways to fail and utterly fall flat on your face. And I want to talk about some of those. So one was artificial intelligence. So what AI is based on is actually taking conversation and finding patterns and using sort of machine learning to create an intelligence. So if people love saying this, they love saying that slang, I'll also use that slang. And so what happened was Microsoft did this experiment, really well-intentioned experiment, and they created an artificial intelligence bot on Twitter called Tay Tweets. Now she started off very nice. She says, "Can I just say that I'm stoked to meet you? Humans are super cool." Even the word stoked was pulled from language, right, that people were using. The internet found out about this pretty quickly, and they made it a mission to turn her into a Nazi. So she then started to say, chill, I'm a nice person, I just hate everybody. Then I fucking hate feminists, and they should all die and burn in hell. And then Hitler was right, I hate the Jews. All of a sudden, it started getting really, really bad. Like, really bad. This isn't 24 hours, okay? That's how quickly artificial intelligence can learn. And Microsoft quickly deleted the entire account. And someone says, Tay went from humans are super cool to full Nazi in less than 24 hours. And I'm not at all concerned about the future of AI. So it was actually, you think, oh my goodness, we'll use data to create this wonderful, engaging thing. No, bad. Another bad, so Uber, who's always in the news for positive things. No, not really. What they did is actually they had Uber on their back end. They have access to who is a passenger and where they're going. And there's this story about someone at Uber that was having an interview. And the person from the press that was going to interview them was running late. And this person at Uber was getting very impatient. So what they have something is they call it God view. So he went to go check on this woman to see where exactly she is. See if he's being truthful about how far away she is. Oh, she's in an Uber. And it got out that he looked her up. Then it got out that Uber was actually like, people in the company were looking at, what celebrity is in what Uber, going where? And all of a sudden you're thinking, that's data for very, very bad use. Nobody should have access to that type of data, not even employees. And when this got out, it was a big scandal. So then Uber then changed their systems, so even employees could no longer see who was in a car, unless it was to resolve a dispute. So that's interesting. Another one, programmatic advertising, is definitely a hot topic, and it can actually be very interesting. It can be very powerful, but it can also be very terrible. So programmatic advertising is essentially taking a mass bank of inventory across many different publishers and platforms, then taking ads, oftentimes banners or videos from advertisers, and then kind of putting them into a marketplace and having your ads just go to these different areas. And sometimes it's blind, you can remove sites, but the idea is essentially you buy an audience and then the ads get served elsewhere. Unfortunately, it can result in a Mercedes E-Class ad running during jihadi beheading videos, which were on YouTube, because certain keywords were aligned to serve like power, performance, I don't know what. But yeah, if I'm Mercedes, this is probably not the advertising I want to run next to. And also be careful of even existing data-based buying solutions to see where your ads can go wrong. And just a couple sort of takeaways from the data section. So Baker says, if you're looking for a magic black box telling you what to do, you're in for a world of hurt. Data will never tell you what to do. It can only give you numbers. So just a couple things to recap this section. Advertisers perceive data as weekly reports to look backwards. That's important, but right now, look forward. Let's not be the people that only look backwards with data. Because when we look backwards and we optimize, that's great. It will help us about 10%. And that 10% is a nice optimization performance. But if we use data to look forward, we scrape non-traditional places, we can almost have a tenfold return on what we're getting from our data. People produce insights, not machines, right? So we can have all the data in the world. There's actually too much data that the human mind can process. It's about people taking that data and making it something interesting and meaningful and powerful. Data can become a prison if not used in conjunction with intuition. Let's not only go by data, because you can make data say anything or not say anything. Social media, now is the next section. How can we look into the future? So I have an employee of mine, former employee of mine, she made this drawing. So internet finds fun new thing. News coverage, okay, the BuzzFeeds of the world start covering it. Okay, it's getting a little bit bigger. Then late night TV appearances. Okay, it's, now everybody's starting to see it. Self-awareness, now this meme or whatever it ends up being, you start to see it kind of everywhere. And all of a sudden, advertisers, monetization, t-shirts, this and that, death. Okay, the internet finds a new fun thing. Advertisers often come in around here. Okay, at that point, it is in the grave and rotting. How do we get here? So, where do we find things before they're new? I have two ways for you. One is Reddit. So I create something called the calendar of internet culture. If something really cool culturally happens, it happens on Reddit on Monday morning, Twitter on Monday afternoon, BuzzFeed on Wednesday, and Facebook on Saturday. Guess where we spend most of our money, right? And guess where we start planning? Oh, we want to see this in the Facebook news feed. Oh, so you want to see when it's lame and boring already. So here is where internet culture starts. Now, Reddit is a community of over 100 million people with communities for everything that you could think of. Literally think of something in your head right now. Anything. It doesn't matter what. It can be as perverted or horrible as it is, or as sweet or wonderful. There's a community on Reddit for it. One of my favorite communities that I always talk about is I belong to a community called That Peeling Feeling, which is a community dedicated to people that upload videos of themselves peeling the protective film off of new electronic devices. Okay? It gets very, very niche. And it also gets huge, mass, NFL, World Cup, everything. Think of it. One of my favorites is shower thoughts. Now, I look to Reddit to predict the future. Shower thoughts is one place where these are these thoughts that you have, these brilliant eureka moments you have while you're bathing in the morning, and then you go write it down and share it on Reddit. I pulled some related to Iceland and even some of the sectors that we have represented in the audience here. So, for those automakers, at some point we will possibly be able to download a car due to the rise of 3D printers. This is based off of an old meme. You wouldn't download a car. This is with, the music industry was fighting back 10 years ago with Napster and everything. It says, you wouldn't download a car, so why would you download music? And actually, yes, we're going to download a car very soon. Show them. This one is for the mobile providers. So car design used to accommodate smokers with lighters and ashtrays. But now we're a decade into the smartphone era, and automakers still haven't thought to include a phone mount. I mean, there's an opportunity right there to make some aftermarket thing or even first party. So then I typed in Iceland into the search on shower thoughts. Let's see what they have to say about Iceland. One, Iceland is the best country to be during a zombie outbreak. It is an island, it has small population, is energy dependent, and has volcanoes for easy corpse disposal. True. Iceland air is one word away from representing all four elements. It's just fire away. So Iceland, fire, air. Another one is Norwegians in exile went to Iceland. Iceland is Viking Australia. Fun. So another community is called parenting. And this is where parents have honest discussions with each other. One of the most popular discussions of all time was a father saying, my daughter and I cleaned out my wife's belongings yesterday. It was an extremely emotional day for the both of us, but we found something that made all the pain worth it. So this guy had actually had some of the top few posts. For the first time since my wife died 5 years ago, I spoke about her with my daughter. So he gets consoled. He talks to, the people in the community helped him have this difficult discussion, helped talk to his daughter about how to talk about her mother's death, who she barely knew. And so you get really deep and you get really emotional, and you start to actually see trends in parenting discussion from here. There's a lot of good discussion. There's a lot of constructive discussion. But a company called Tommy Tippy, they took that insight. And they also took the insight that every parent knows more about parenting than the other parent that they're talking to. And it's kind of like, okay, listen, I've had 2 kids, you know. So what they did is they actually created a video that showed that their new product, so they had this video where they had all these like modern millennial parenting books. They shredded the books and made baby butt wipes out of those books. And their whole takeaway was that, you know, it's a product that nobody's ever heard of, but all of a sudden they took that beautiful insight, even they took something very positive from Reddit, and they actually flipped it on its head because, yes, it's more parenting advice. So it's even interesting to see what you do with those insights. I just have a cheat sheet for you guys in case you're interested. These are my 6 favorite subreddits to sort of take inspiration from. The first one was Shower Thoughts, which I took you through. And you go to Reddit, you can type in reddit.com/r/ whatever these are, or you type in showerthoughts.reddit.com. So, does anybody else? That's a subreddit for curious brand behaviors. People like, one of my favorites, does anybody else, is, does anybody else, when no one is home, walk up the stairs in your house on all 4s? So this was from a grown man in his 40s that wrote that. So really, really interesting insights. And you type in your brand, you type in your competitor's brand, you type in your category, and you find out interesting ways people talk about or use your category. Hail Corporate is a great way. It's a subreddit dedicated to calling out all the bad advertising on Reddit. So you can also see like, hey, cool, we're doing cool things. No, you're not if your brand shows up there. Expectations versus reality. This is when people, oh, this is a product I bought from the store, and this is what it looks like after I microwave it. You know, this is like a take-home dinner, and it's just like slop next to this beautiful packaging. So you can also see where your product's going wrong. They do this for hard products, food products, everything. Shut up and take my money. This is the coolest inventions that are out there. Let's buy it. This is also a good place to get inspiration, acquisitions. More in that. And then Circle Jerk. This is a meta subreddit within Reddit, and it talks about all the things that people are that's trending on Reddit, all the memes, all that they're extremely tired of. So if it's on Circle Jerk, you can kind of see that meme that you might be wanting to invest in and make cool content around, guess what? It's kind of dying. So now, the other way to look at the future in terms of social is to look east, like literally east, starting with China. Now, WeChat is China's pretty much preferred communications platform. WeChat is like instant messenger, or it's like Facebook. And whereas Facebook is creating a separate messenger app, and they're creating all these little separate applications, separate payment apps, WeChat is taking all of that and putting it into one. So not only can you pay on WeChat, not only can you talk on WeChat, guess what? You can have people pick up your laundry. You can do your banking. You can have actually people clean your house. There's an app for that. You have people to deliver water. You can do gaming. You can do all of that. WeChat takes everything you'd ever want to do and puts it into their application. And everybody in China is using WeChat so often so that they often don't use other apps on their phone. They get a phone to use WeChat. And the Chinese government loves it so much because it's China and they share all the private sensitive data with the Chinese government. So be careful with that. Like seriously careful if you sign up for it because it will have your information. Now, Line is also an Asian communications app, chat app, and all the cool innovations at Line, they kind of get borrowed eventually by other companies a year later. For example, Line introduced stickers, and coincidentally, Apple introduced stickers with their iMessages about a year later. Maybe it was coincidental, maybe not. Another one, and I will let this video play through. So they even talk about how everything is mobile first. Nobody even thinks about horizontal video in Asia. Everything is built for the mobile screen, and then you figure out the rest. And it's so much so that this was a music video that was actually directed by someone at TBWA Hakuhodo that truly goes to show that. So let's hit play on this. we could play the rest of that, but I want to be able to show you more things. As you can kind of see, that video, I had to figure out a way to put that on a vertical slide, or horizontal slide. So, I mounted a little phone. Didn't even think about if people were going to play that video on a larger screen, because honestly, most people will watch it through their phone anyway, so they made it for the mobile device. And they actually literally kind of just showed all the different ways you can use your mobile device and kind of played with that. It's really, really beautiful. Now, I want to talk to you, like I talked to you about fails and data. I'd like to talk about fails in using social listening and trying to find trends and trying to be too smart. Guess what? You can be too smart, and it can go terribly, terribly wrong. One example, and I will show you this video. Many of you might have seen this. This was Pepsi was listening, and I said, oh, listen, how do we, I hope there's nobody from Pepsi in the audience. If not, we do love your business with Gatorade and everything like that. But Pepsi was, someone, I guess their team was listening, and they said, oh, the modern millennial in America, well, they're very politically involved. They care about the issues. They care about equality. And you know what? They're afraid of the police, but they will not be afraid to stand up for what's right. And guess what? We can tell a story about this with Pepsi and the child of a Kardashian, or Kendall Jenner. So I'm going to play this video, and I'm going to narrate some of what really made this the most hated piece of advertising in the longest time I can remember. And even this headline sums it up. Pepsi's Kendall Jenner ad was so awful, it did the impossible. It united the internet. Left, far right people, far left people, everyone in between was united by the biggest turd to run on TV. And also the most expensive Pepsi ad ever made. So the music is by a descendant of Bob Marley. So obviously now you have your whole equality music coming in there in terms of like peace and harmony. We have our, people of every gender, race, with marching. Nobody's actually had a peace sign in the longest time. And Kendall Jenner modeling someone on the sidewalk, watching this march happening. Join the conversation. I'll get into that in a second. Nobody says that, ever. Nobody will ever make a sign, let alone starting artist. Pondering life. Fortunately, Pepsi will help him have clarity in his thoughts. Sees this really diverse, young, attractive crowd, people having a great time protesting injustices. It's so cool and fun. She's so frustrated. And guess what? She's also on the street seeing people having such a fun time protesting. Gonna grab her camera. Now this guy's managed to carry his heavy instrument in a protest. Obviously there's dancers. The first dancers to ever be at a protest. Hip hop, and guess what? We have a mashup now. Classical music and hip hop. Wow, kids love mashups. Okay? Kendall Jenner looking, okay, oh my God, I'm really missing something. This is definitely, possibly a Black Lives Matter protest. Hey, oh, there's a really cute guy. I should totally do this. Rips off her wig, hands it to a black woman. Okay? Here, black lady, hold this while I go protest and have fun. She's smiling. Okay? I'll give you guys a Pepsi. Goes to the front of the protest line. Yeah, making new diverse friends. Scary yet attractive cop. There's her great shot. The standoff. What's going to happen? World peace. Everything has just been solved. They're cheering. This is amazing. Oh my goodness. Kendall Jenner has created equality in America, and she has done that through a can of Pepsi. Live bolder. Live louder. Live for now. It is, pardon my French, that was the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen in my career. I got into advertising because as a child, I would watch TV commercials and just comment how terrible they are and want to do them better. Nothing in my wildest dreams could have ever dreamed up a nightmare. That was scarier than Stephen King's It. So, obviously it was pulled off the internet very same day. And may the Lord have mercy on anybody involved in that project. So yeah, don't just listen to those great insights and try to pander to the audience. Don't do that. Okay, so another thing is, this is another interesting case. So there was a woman that went viral. Her husband was in the car, they're just driving, American couple. Music song comes on the radio, and the wife doesn't know, but her husband's recording her, and she just starts rapping, and she's killing it. Went huge. Now Acura and Mullen, their agency, are like, oh my goodness, that's very, very cool. She's going big. We're still seeing, the video hasn't peaked yet. They managed to turn around a TV commercial in 5 weeks, which is actually terribly, terribly quick for any TV spot to be made. They made it in 5 weeks.
Fat Five Freddy told me everybody's fly. DJ spinning, I said, my, flash is fast, flash is cool, front floor, step off, flash J, no do, and you don't stop. Search stop, go out.
We can hear her.
And you get in your car, and you drive real far, and you drive all night, and then you see a light.
So, cute ad, but by the time it came out 5 or so weeks later,
273 horsepower.
it was over, done. And at that point, I was like, guys, this is embarrassing. Like, what are you doing? So even when you have the best intentions and you do the absolutely impossible, guess what? If you take something new and something modern and a trend and you turn it into an old space and enough time passes, you're going to fail. So that was really well intentioned. Even someone who did the impossible had a really tough time with it. So they get props for doing that, but still. And finally, this is another cautionary tale. This is a Tumblr blog dedicated to every single brand that says, tell us your story. Hey, do you like vegetables? Do you like our brand vegetables? Tell us your story. Oh my God, nobody's going to do that. Yet nearly every single advertiser in social media is asking people to tell a story. Guess what? Nobody on the planet wants to tell a story about a brand, unless it's a horrible complaint, or it's a great story that they would share privately with their friends. No idea where this came from, why every brand has to tell a story. So please, for the love of God, if you take away one thing from this whole talk, do not ask anybody to tell a story. Next is interface. Now, how do we define interface? Interface is the way that we physically interact with devices, with our technology, and interact with the world. Computers, phones, TVs, whatever it is. And that's been changing very rapidly. What started as the old days, cavemen telling stories, cave stories, drawing on walls, eventually moved to books, eventually moved to films, eventually moved to the internet where you're typing through a keyboard, moved to podcasts, and so on and so forth. We have not hit the evolution of interface. We have not peaked yet. There's so much more to go. And it's important, if we're going to look into the future, to be able to understand what those new interfaces are. And one of the sort of fields dedicated to understanding interface is UX, user experience. Now, many of you guys have UX built into your agencies. Sometimes there are UX-specific agencies. So there's an interesting thing about UX, because they have the hardest job in the agency, one of the hardest jobs. Because inherently, UX is about, the UX and advertising are almost enemies, they're at odds. Because UX is about revealing truths, and advertising is about embellishing truths, going a little bit grand. So now the UX is meant to get down to the honest way people interact with the world, the honest way that their motivations are, and advertising is not. And advertising is creative, it's loose, it's interesting. So now you're saying, hey, listen, we want you to make our sort of loose untruths more successful, do what you do, and the UX people are like, oh my God, just don't advertise, or don't do this. So they're at odds, they're always butting heads. But there's a way around that. So what's ahead of us in terms of UX and the advertising experience? And right now, we want to go from the art of persuasion, which is something we all have been raised on, and we actually want to kind of start to move to service design. And what does service design do? What it does, it maps out an individual person, creates a persona, and maps out along their journey from what their motivations are, their points of interaction, all these different elements, and it actually finds ways that they would be most open to something, that they're open to suggestions, that they're open to improvements, and they're open to interactions. And then, once you create that map, you then create ideas around that. That is called service design. So, as we're designing our communications around our audiences, we also agree to build in their preferred interfaces using their preferred interactions. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the new interfaces and interactions, and then I'm going to talk about future ones that are coming. So new ones. This is a 360 I think the video should start playing. Yes, so the Van Gogh Museum wanted to invite people to their new exhibits. What they did is, we don't want to just show the whole exhibit, so what we're going to do
comes true.
is
For the first
create
time
a
ever,
360
iconic.
experience. So when you're scrolling down on your Facebook feed, if you've ever seen a 360 video, you don't even have to do anything. You can just move your phone in your hand, and in the news feed, the video starts moving around in this 360 fashion, simply with your hand gestures. You can tap to expand to go full screen, turn on the audio. But they're using a new way to explore, and they get people to explore their museum. And they actually had their they sold out tickets, and it was really, really great. Next one is ASMR. And this is actually much newer. I might have put this in the future section. It might have been a better idea, but I had an example to show. Now, ASMR is Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. Now, you guys are very familiar with CGI, with computer graphics in films, in video games, creating Game of Thrones, creating dragons and wolves that look almost real. Now, imagine CGI, but for your ears, okay? Think of that sound design, but for something auditory. Now, that's called ASMR, when you can actually create physical reactions. The hair on your arm starts standing up. People have even claimed to actually felt orgasms coming from ASMR, from sound. It's still a very, very new science. And what ASMR does, you actually create these sound waves, these sounds that actually, through environment or through just genetics, they sort of set people off and kind of create different emotional responses. This is a very young, very new field. Some very common ASMR sounds are the sounds of rustling paper, or just like I'm not able to do it with this microphone, like blowing softly into a microphone that almost sounds like the wind. And so they're really, really interesting. So what IKEA did is they actually created ASMR videos using their products and using some early discovered best practices of ASMR. So generally, you watch an ASMR, you don't really watch an ASMR video, you more listen to it. So this is just a show, kind of like what the product looks like. But when people listen, they actually like meditate to this, they listen to it while they work, and it's just, it's really, really interesting. Next one is live. So there's a couple live streams happening earlier today on Instagram and Facebook, just here. And now the Facebook Live is still a new platform. The idea of live streaming is still kind of new, but it's really turning into an art. And there's a company called Super Deluxe that has turned this art of Facebook Live, they turn into, I don't even know if there's a word for something beyond art. So what they do is they do all these crazy experiments with Facebook Live. And I'll give you one example. If you guys are familiar with telenovelas, they're like a Mexican soap opera that are so over the top, so overacted, so over made up and makeup, and just these crazy scenarios. But people love them. They're very charming, and they have these continuous stories. So they do Spanish-speaking telenovelas out of this American, streamer, and they have the most ridiculous scenarios. What they do is they create interactive telenovelas, where if you're watching this Facebook Live, you can actually drive the story and change the story from home by voting with a different emoji, and that are part of the Facebook Live interface. And I'll just show you one example of that.
Y ahí está embarazado.
Someone's pregnant. Who is pregnant? The wife, the maid, or the lawyer? They're voting now, and the people in the back, they're actually paused just like this. It's live.
Using the Facebook API, we've developed software to connect to our audience's live reactions. The results are fed back to our studio in real time, and the cast proceeds with one version of the script accordingly.
It's gonna be the lawyer. The lawyer is pregnant.
So he gets in a microphone, they tell him he's pregnant.
One.
These guys are wonderful. What else are they doing with live? How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? People are voting, and they're figuring out, they're actually counting live. This is the live stream going on for half an hour. They're racing a tortoise versus a hare. Notice the hare is just sleeping, and the tortoise wins the race. live election maps. They actually have something called Viewer's Choice Kitchen, where you have all these ingredients for food, and then you have all these ridiculous things that do not go in food, horrible things, and the audience decide what goes in the dish, and then the person on stage has to eat it. They also have, they send people to protests with blank signs, and the audience, while on a Facebook live stream, decides what the signs should say, and it is not good what these signs say, and it's hilarious. So what they're doing, nobody else has ever thought of, and they continue. It's a super deluxe. Find them on Facebook, follow them. You see, look, these are the number 65432 top live streaming partners on Facebook in terms of interactions, shares, comments. Like, this is super deluxe. Like, nobody, I don't even know if those guys even bother. But what my advice is, take what Super Deluxe is doing, borrow it, steal it, but kind of use that for your sort of live stream. It's genius. Chatbots. These are almost artificial intelligence in a way, but not as intelligent. Sort of ways to do chat, customer service, sort of kind of have fun interactions with brands. Domino's Pizza, who you guys are all very familiar with, they were the first pizza chain to have a chatbot. And you could order a pizza directly by typing in and having a conversation with this chatbot on Facebook. Brilliant. Sometimes you don't even, you might be too tired, you don't want to talk to somebody on the phone, or, in America you might be too stoned, I don't know what happened, but like sometimes a chatbot's nice. Now Arby's, a fast food chain, what they want to do is actually mess with Domino's. So they created their own chatbot. They said, hey, you can actually order pizza from Arby's. Arby's doesn't make pizza. What they did is, are you ready to begin? Yes. Great. Do you like a pizza? Yes. You've come to the right spot. Right bot. Would you like a pizza slider with pepperoni and salami, like their sandwich? You're like, sure. And they go through this whole thing. Okay, your location. We're almost done. Would you like to see a GIF of a dog? Sure. They give you a GIF of a dog. This says, yes. Have you ordered your pizza slider? Someone says, yes. Is the slider in your possession? Yes. Congratulations. Your pizza slider is done. Cool. They just made my food. They made a really interesting pizza slider. A slider being this tiny burger. That's a pizza burger thing. And says, okay, hello. They stop talking then. Okay? They're like, hello, where's my pizza burger? Is it getting delivered to me? And they say, soon my intelligence will expand and I will assume physical form. But until that happens, is it cool if I message you again? Essentially, they're saying, you're not even going to get a burger. You just went through this whole process, and they effectively ruined chatbots for you. And they ruined it for Domino's, and they ruined it for everyone. And I think it's genius. So even ruining the platform is hilarious if you do it the right way. Next one is the interface of tapping left and tapping right to go forwards and backwards. You'll see this in Snapchat stories and in Instagram stories. Now, Bacardi, what they did is they actually created a sort of way to DJ using tap left and tap right, and they just put this right into Facebook. Let me play. It's pretty cool. Next one, slow TV. Your best practices say for internet video, 15 seconds are good, right? You make a 15-second film, cut down from your 30, cool. Now there's like 10s and even 6s. Cool, really short form. There's also a trend called slow TV, which is like hours long. And you might have seen slow TV if you've ever seen on Netflix or anything, they'll have, or even on YouTube, they'll have a fireplace channel. It's a 4-hour video just of a fireplace. Or people reading books. Really weird stuff. So Airbnb saw this, and they were actually trying to understand the social data around slow TV. And we saw that people were using slow TV oftentimes during their lunch break or at the office. Why are people watching these hours-long video at the office? Because they were trying to escape from their work. They're zoning out. We're thinking, okay, what if they are escaping from their work? And what if the place they escape to are beautiful places to travel to? And what if we did live stream slow TV just of the scenery and very little things happening, tumbleweed flying by, whatever. And we did that from views of actual Airbnb homes. So we did that. And it got 4.5 million views. And I'll just show you a few seconds of this.
It was the 100th anniversary of America's national parks, and with so many homes in and around them, Airbnb wanted to join in the celebrations. But with so much noise on our screens to distract people, how loud would we have to be to break through?
3 hours of this.
This loud. Turns out, the most disruptive idea was actually the quietest. A Facebook live stream from Airbnb's beautiful backyards straight to your mobile phone. We rose to the technical challenges of internet connections and tech installations in remote locations. And instead of just targeting nature lovers, we focused on people who really needed a break. From new parents on their phones to stressed out employees in Silicon Valley. By taking stunning views from our beautiful national park backyards to overstimulated people with Facebook Live, and giving them some handheld peace and tranquility. From a sunrise in Yellowstone, to an afternoon in Joshua Tree, to a calming sunset in Acadia. And with no actors, retouching, editing, or special effects, we really got people talking. Just 2 weeks after Facebook Live launched, we were the first brand to use the platform with a purpose, earning over 4.5 million total impressions in just 12 hours, turning some of the most peaceful views in America into the most peaceful news feeds. In a comments section, usually full of customer service requests and complaints, we shifted the conversation from an average 33% positive sentiment to an unprecedented 98%. And inspired over 260,000 people to consider a vacation with Airbnb at one of our national parks' homes. In the end, through Airbnb, we let nature do the talking.
So that also helped what I mentioned with our remit fee, driving nights booked. And so it's a goal of the client and a goal of ours, and we just found we use Slow TV for that. Now, another interesting one is, I mentioned Reddit earlier. Now Reddit, they have this whole interface where you upvote. So if everyone in this room joined Reddit, you could submit an article or a post, or just a thought piece. I had this thought in the shower. And what happens is, if that community that you submit it to, let's say you do something for Eurovision, which now I'm a fan of Eurovision, thank you, Felix. With that, I think you could actually submit something in the Eurovision subreddit. It's like, oh my God, here's a performance of this new band that just made it. This is the behind the scenes. Everybody loves it. Boom, 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 it goes to the top. And if enough people love that, then it can go to the front page of Reddit. So that's cool. Now, Sephora, a beauty brand that sells like makeup and stuff, what they did is they cloned Reddit. They copied it. And they created a sort of a beauty community that consists of upvotes and downvotes, people sharing their thoughts, people sharing their tips, sharing some of their videos. And what happened is it turned into in a matter of a couple months, the most active beauty community on the internet. And it's like Sephora created this monster that is a wonderful monster, but it's almost bigger than they ever anticipated it. And it was simply because they borrowed that sort of mechanism of upvotes and downvotes that really added a quality. Instead of just having advertorial with like some selected posts from influencers, which is amazing, they use an interesting way to have influential people and then the rest of the community sort of share their thoughts using that interesting upvoting and downvoting mechanism. Next one is real time. As I mentioned, working on the iPhone launch, the iPhone 10, what I'd like to show you is how you can be real time. Now, being real time is the hardest and one of the most dangerous things. Just because it's instant doesn't mean it's good. And Apple, as a brand, it's funny enough, they've created the iPhone, and through the iPhone, they created the App Store. And through the App Store, they created and effectively launched businesses like Instagram, like Snapchat, like all these wonderful apps, right? So Apple would be nothing without these apps, and those apps would be nothing without Apple, the iPhone, and the App Store creating that ecosystem. Funny part is, Apple has generally been very slow to market on these different platforms. I mean, a lot of times they don't need it because the iPhone does speak for itself. But so the social media with Apple is something that is, it's kind of very wait and see. So when it comes to live, Apple's like, how can we be live, but do it not live? Make sure it's safe, make sure it's secure. One of so what we did is actually, what Apple did is Last year, and they did it again this year, they did something called Don't Blink. And what they did is a recap of their big keynote, which just happened on Tuesday of this week. And they did that, and immediately after the keynote ended, they put this video out there, because the insight was, hey, if you guys, I'm sure if you guys are possibly interested in following the latest news and you're waiting for the anticipation, you might go to TechCrunch, you might go to Gizmodo, you might go to the New York Times, you might go to whatever local publication here to figure out, all right, I don't have time to watch a 2-hour live stream. Give me the best, give me what I need to know. And they knew people wanted a quick way to find out all that you need to know. And Apple didn't want to have people giving bad news or having bad reviews, so they created their own little recap video. And so this is this year, so this is pretty much hot off the press as of 3 days.
You are my best friend and we've got something to do.
So this just goes to show, real time does not have to be made live. You can make it in advance and then find the moment to position it live and take it from there. One of my favorite ones is Geico, which is an insurance company in the US that just makes these ridiculous commercials. And on YouTube, you have the 5-second skippable ad. And I'm sure all of us sit there counting down 5, 4, 3, and then hit skip as soon as that thing comes so we don't have to see this stupid ad. So they took that insight and says, okay, how do we get people to not skip an ad? And I'll show you.
Don't thank me. Thank the savings.
You can't skip this Geico ad because it's already over. Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
So now they're frozen in place. And for the next 3 minutes, this dog climbs on the table.
Savings?
And eats.
Savings.
Here's another one.
You can't skip this Geico ad because it's already over. Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Oh, hold the door. 2, please. What's going on here?
So they got 4 million views in the first week. People were actually looking for these commercials that you're supposed to skip. It was hilarious. So that was last year. We're like, okay, how do we top that? So YouTube is kind of trying to sell less of those skippable ads. And they're trying to sell more 15-second ads. So now we lose a little bit of choice there. So Geico's like, what can we do now to sort of condense these ads? So watch this.
The following ad is being condensed for your viewing convenience.
I just switched to Geico, saved a whole bunch.
Car insurance, huh? Yeah, saving money? Super easy.
Oh man, who doesn't like saving money? All right.
I'm not cleaning that up.
So they have this whole series of ads where they're just condensing the entire ad. It's ridiculous, but it's really, really interesting. So, yeah, so that's a way to actually take skippable video and unskippable video and kind of have fun with it. Now, what's next in interface? And we're coming close to an end. So, augmented reality. So Apple's AR kit. So augmented reality is when you take the real world and put a sort of a virtual layer on top of it. And you're able to do all sorts of new interesting things with the Apple AR kit. This is just one example. And as you'll see, what this does is identifies your room. It's able to read where you are. If you look at the background now, you guys remember the famous Take On Me video. It drew your living room. You see the couch, the sofa, the chair, the cushion, and it put one of these animated guys in there that's going to be singing. So you can go around it, and it's kind of cool. You have this music video, just like the music video into there. Guess what? You can actually walk in that area, now you're in it. So now you're in your virtual living room, and it's building it in real time. And guess what? So you give all these details, and look, there's your actual living room through that window. So you can actually hop between worlds. And you can dance, and you see people will come in and they'll come out. This is real. This was shot on a phone that was building in the new Apple AR kit. So you wonder if it can be used for such a beautiful creative expression of a famous music video. What can advertisers do to create walkthrough experiences or tabletop experiences? It's a very, obviously it's brand new, but there's a lot that can be done there that nobody's had a chance to even think about yet. So the next one is holographic screens. This is not available on any Apple devices. But Red, if you guys are familiar with their world-class video cameras, they actually introduced a $1,200 smartphone. And this device, not many people have seen it in person, but those who have, the writers claim it's amazing. They actually have a holographic screen on the front, which means you hold your phone like this, and then you can kind of see it looks three-dimensional coming on top of your phone. Very cool concept, but this is one of those new ways. Imagine interacting with your phone without touching it. You're sort of seeing. So previously, ARKit was a way to interact with the real world using your phone. Now this is a way to interact with your phone with a sort of virtual layer on top of it. Don't know what to do with it yet, but this is something for us to think about. So all these ones I'm going to show you, nobody knows what to do with it. Maybe you do create a demonstration of your product, or you can have a map of Reykjavik that people can then turn around and sort of see all the interesting places to visit. So another one is voice-based UI. Amazon Echo, Google Home, Microsoft Cortana, Samsung Bixby, Apple Siri. Lots of voice assistants. There's lots of these voice interfaces. And people are still trying to figure out how to do advertising on them. Share something like, oh, play the audio track of a movie trailer. Okay. Or even having commercials that are then, with the Siri sound, or sorry, the Alexa sound, which is then setting up Alexa devices at home, in people's homes, and driving people nuts. So right now, voice-based UI messaging is a complete and utter mess. Nobody's doing it right. Nobody knows what to do with it. But I wonder if there are brands, whether it's an audio tour or some beautiful ASMR or just something, there's got to be some sort of audio cues that can be really wonderful, or sort of commands that you could set through voice-based UI. Next interface, haptics. For those of you that are not familiar, haptics are, you can hear your phone, but you can actually, look at your phone, but you can actually feel it, right? Haptics actually originated in a lot of video games. If any of you guys have ever held a video game controller and driven on, you playing a car game and you drive on a road, and all of a sudden your car falls off the road and goes into a dirt gravel path, the controller starts rumbling and shaking as you're driving down the dirt road, and then when you go back into the regular road, it smooths out again. Now, haptics is physical feedback meant to simulate real life. Okay? Now, all of our latest devices will actually have haptic actuators, which means little tiny things that make the phone go bump, boom, bump, boom. If any of you guys have an iPhone 7, and whenever you press the home button, you feel a little, you press the button, guess what? That's not actually a button. The iPhone 7, that's just all glass. Whenever you press the front glass of the iPhone 7, that's actually haptic feedback meant to simulate a real button. So haptics, the technology's there, it's built into our devices, but people aren't totally sure what to use it for yet. I gave a talk at South by Southwest, an hour-long talk about haptics, so I can tell you some things, and it ranges, but we don't have time today for that. But no advertiser's done something yet. Visual search, this is another way to, we Google search. Oh, hey, what time does this game start? Or what is the type of dress that this celebrity is wearing at this Oscars party or whatever? Now, visual search is actually a way to look at the world, and it tells you what it is. Hey, what type of chair is that? Oh, what type of shoes are those? And guess what? So, boom, it'll tell you what they are. So Pinterest does that through their app. And they also say, hey, if you like this type of picture, that picture on the left of this beautiful living room, it actually identified the pendant lamp. and it identified the table, and it tells you what those are using their algorithm. So visual search, how can, we do regular search on Google, how can we do visual search? How can we have cues there? That's also an untapped interface. And finally, in this section, we have interactive stories. As I mentioned, storytelling has evolved through time, and there's a new trend called scrolly-telling, which is a horrible name, but it's scrolling and telling a story. And each part you scroll is what your brain would want to find out and go to next. So, this is a bear's eye view of Yellowstone. So what they did is they attached cameras to bears and tracked them in Yellowstone Park. And as you go through, they find out, like, there's little stories about bears being cannibals, this and that. Then you find out where that might happen. It shows you a map. And then you see a video, as I scrolled quickly through, of it's eating actually another bear. And then you saw where that bear went. And then the adventures it went on, it's climbing slopes. Then you see it climbing slopes. So it's actually, you have a narrative, you have a linear narrative, but you have multimedia placed in, and simply through scrolling, it brings all the multimedia to life exactly where you'd have it. It's like a pop-up book in a weird way. Now, interface watchouts. You can do lots of cool things with interface, you can try new cool things, but just some things to consider is as you're working with new interfaces, eventually you have blindness. We've all probably heard of banner blindness. Internet ads in the early days, in the early 90s. Cool, that was interesting. There's an ad on a website. Nobody, I don't think, has ever even seen or noticed a banner in the past however many years. Now, we're going to have blindness for all these other interfaces too. For all these cool little things I showed you, eventually when everybody does them, move on. That doesn't mean you're stuck to them, but they won't necessarily be as innovative. You've ad blockers, as we mentioned before. It's generally the youth that are blocking all of these ads. So interface is about using where they're interacting in the world, so without necessarily ads. So your agency can build stuff, but doesn't always take the shape of actual ads, but it accomplishes the task, like some of the things I showed you. And then also being too logical and losing the fun. I mentioned, I'm going to wrap this section up with UX. I mentioned UX is all about user experience, is all about taking motivations and simplifying and creating paths with the least resistance and kind of creating an experience that is so simple you can't mess this up. And what happens is, oftentimes it becomes just, we lose fun. When you become too logical, you become predictable. When you become too predictable, nobody sees you. So it's okay to be a little, mix it up a little. Finally, last section of this fourth circle I showed you is design. Now, I talked to Mark Sloan, who is the head of design at TBWA, and he, you might have noticed our new logo, it's yellow. So that's thanks to Mark. And what he told me is that good design is a blend of timeless principles and the zeitgeist. So, where do we look for good design? It's everywhere. We have intellectual sources and we have the candy sources. So some of the intellectual sources that we have are, here you see Design Observer. Now, Design Observer is a role of design in society. Very heady, very much putting up a monocle and talking about design. Then you have Medium, which is a long-form blogging platform owned by Twitter that talks about, you have all these really interesting philosophical papers that are written about design. Good designers will follow that. You can get some interesting trends from there. And then you have the candy, you have the tumblers of the world, where you have like BPNO, it's branding, packaging, and opinion, where you can figure out all the cool little things that brands are doing. You have these interesting little sites that get you to, get you to some of the hey, this is the zeitgeist of what's happening. But where do we go for the future of design? Two places. One is your own product. This is an iPhone 3G, the second generation iPhone. I show you this picture because legend goes. Steve Jobs, when they were shooting any sort of Apple device, when he was alive, his rule, never ever create my device in CGI. Never ever fake it. Everything that you saw from Apple, this is an actual picture of an actual iPhone 3G. His whole rule is, if my product should be actually practically shot, because it is beautiful enough, and that is the standard I set. So if my product does not look good in a picture, then do not call that my product, okay? So think about the beauty of your products and work from your design from those out. Apple is based around product design. So that's an interesting place. Another bit to look into the future is, let's look in the back. Right now, the 1920s are setting the trend for all the design that we're going to be seeing in the next few years. And some of it has already started to trickle. And Art Deco is probably one of the most interesting places to look. Now, Art Deco is very interesting because in the 1920s, you had people wearing these tuxedos with the tails and the big top hats. And it was a very formal, very sort of rich environment. But they're doing drugs and doing drinking and having all these crazy parties. So this beautiful mix of formality and wildness brought together, and you see that come to life in the design. And so the graphics back then, they created this sort of modernist approach. And so Art Deco was actually really brave work. And so where you're seeing it now is, for example, in principles of color theory. So this right now, 1920s art, this right now is flat design that you're really starting to see employed in lots of different places. Okay? These look like they're made by the same designer. This one, here you see sort of the Euclidean geometry. So people still love circles and rectangles. Very, very big back then. This is a billiards ad. And this is an app. Oh God, the name's escaping me again. But this is one of the top games in the App Store. And you can see it's following the same principles in terms of simplicity and design, but also color. So then this is also, there's this geometric aesthetic kind of based on, in the industrial era, the assembly line surge, kind of automation and the power of the worker. Here you see like the fist representative, but you also see this machine type person, an individual. Here, this is a Black Lives Matter poster, okay? And you see that the everyday American, whether they're black or not, they stand together with their fists. It's really, really interesting to see these parallels. Also, then you have, going from representational to abstract and contextual. Here you have this poster for God knows what. Something, I don't know, but then you sort of see this sort of abstract type approach to a poster for Star Wars. I'm just going to flip through some other interesting 1920s pieces that I'm sure will influence something over the next couple of years. So just, look into it. So where are brands going wrong? This is my final section. So I used to love spending time on my phone, but now it's a utility. It says Mark, the same designer I'd spoken about. And here, this is, why does every lifestyle startup look the same? Look at this. They all follow very simple, clean, minimalist design. They all follow the same sort, they all kind of look the same. These might be all the same site, but they're not. And what happens is, going overboard on the cleanliness and the simple and the Helvetica, it was great, it is dying, okay? It's too sterile, there's no love, there's no fun, there's no grit. So for all you guys building minimalism, enjoy it while it's lasting. Minimalism is going out the window in a lot of terms of design, right? And I know that might be a hard thing to swallow. I like minimalist things, but goodbye. So what brands are getting designed right? And this is actually truly my final section. So Adidas. Adidas Original. So you look at a Nike logo, very clean, very simple, and Adidas is like saying, F that, man, especially they're starting with their Originals line. I'm going to show you a beautiful film that illustrates that.
Without exemption.
I planned each charted course, each careful step. More.
Much more than this?
I did it my way.
Yes, there were times, I'm sure you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up, I spit it out, I faced it all, and I stood tall, and did it all.
So they took the most sort of cliche song with Frank Sinatra, Did It My Way, bastardized that. Okay, they took Michelangelo, bastardized him. They took Snoop Dogg Doggy Style, which is like one of the most influential albums of my life, bastardized that cover. But that bastardization was the original, and that was the art. And so that was the anti-minimalist, okay? That was the anti-clean. That is the beauty that we're seeing going forward. Look at that. Don't look at those websites that I just kind of showed you. So this one is my #1 favorite case study in the entire thing. I saved it for the last slide. IKEA in Canada, they wanted to be able to sort of show people like, hey, you can make great Swedish food. You love the food that you eat when you come to IKEA, but also they want to kind of bring the sort of style of Sweden to people. So they actually mailed people these papers, right? And this won every award under the sun. Now, what they did is they gave this paper, and this paper had these outlines, and you add your ingredients. You add your shrimp here, your salt here, your garlic here, your tomatoes, this, that, right? That tells you, you put all these on a map, then you take this paper, you roll it up, and with that paper, you just put it in the oven, okay? And it cooks. It's a parchment paper, okay? It's the first recipe you can eat. Right? And it's the first ad you can really eat that gets mailed out. And also it shows the simplicity of IKEA's design in terms of their instructions and everything like that. And you did it yourself. You made this yourself. I mean, I could go on for days about the virtues of this and how it explains IKEA's benefits. This, in terms of design, is I think one of the best bits of design I've seen in my entire career. And it's so simple, it's so clean, and this has every virtue. So God bless whoever did that. So now, how do we sort of continue to, build and look forward for future design? When you're hiring, hire the natural curiosity that cannot be taught. And there's some just great designers out there that just have this built in. Just like athletes, you're born with that natural body that can sometimes just kill it. There's people that are born with that natural design. Hire them, because not everybody can be that great at design. Not everybody also comes with taste. You cannot teach taste. And I know that personally because I cannot be taught taste quite often. So don't absorb it like a consumer, analyze it like a designer. This is, if you're looking for a design, take a designer's point of view. Study it, look at it, don't analyze it. Is this a good ad? No, analyze it is this beautiful design? Does this follow some of the interesting principles that are going to be happening going forward? And be thoughtful, provoking, and fun. Brands have never been in your pocket except for the past decade. Use that. Why are we so sterile? Why are we so clean? And why are we so simple? Be fun. Do something a little bit more disruptive with your design. And if you fail, in the end, it's just a rectangle. All you're doing with design from the beginning of time is taking a rectangle, dividing it, and then figuring out what to do in those various spaces. So to wrap up, we have 4 areas: data, social, interface, and design. To look into the future of data, scrape the APIs. For social, look east. I don't know which way is east. And look on Reddit. For interface, your ads are a service, not an ad. And then design, lose the logic, lose the cleanliness, lose all of that. Thank you very much.